Okay, we're learning the Sikha, the Hadran, and the Rambam from Tavshim Mem Vav. Merhalten Sif Tez Vav. Okay, so the last point that we learned here is, it's working.
So she wants to know why there's no school.
The last point we learned here is that the Rebbe is explaining that when we speak about Mashiach, there's the Ikar of Mashiach, and then there's the Pu'ula of Mashiach. The Ikar of Mashiach is Mashiach himself, Melech HaMashiach. Melech HaMashiach is the Yechidah Shebenefesh, the Etzem of the whole Klal Yisrael. On that level, you can't say that the point of Mashiach is to fix the world, to make the world a better or even holy, godly place. The Welt is not Tevis Mokim. Everything that exists is all a prat in the existence of Mashiach himself. So therefore the Rebbe says the main point is Bias HaMashiach. Let Mashiach himself come. You like the Eibishter himself. Mashiach is the Yechidah, which is completely one with the Eibishter himself. He's completely one with the Eibishter himself. So like by the Eibishter himself, you can't say that the Eibishter's existence is for some other purpose, connected to something, influencing something. Same thing, of course. Mashiach is completely bottled to the Eibishter himself. Just like it, this is a different level. By Mashiach it says, Hine Yaskel Avdi Yorim V'Nosa V'Gova Ma'oid. 5. Why 5 expressions? Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya Yechidah. Mashiach is the only one that has the neshama on the level of Yechidah. Even Adam Arishan, which had the highest neshama, even more than the others. Right. His neshama was in the level of Chaya, because it says, V'yi Adam Nefesh Ruach Chaya. That Ruach Chaya. Mashiach is going to have a neshama that's going to be in the level of Yechidah. The meaning of Yechidah is no identity. You're naming something by what it's unified with. Why aren't you naming it? Right. Chaya means it has life. Neshama and Nefesh, these are all descriptions of some level of life. Yechidah, you're giving a description to an existence saying that it has no existence. The name is that it's completely Yochid, receiving from the Yochid of the Eibishter. That's Mashiach. If what?
His Yechidah
yes.
Higher than our Yechidah?
Our Yechidah is a nitzutz of that Yechidah. Mashiach is the Yechidah HaKlalis. The Yechidah that every Yid possesses is a nitzutz of the Yechidah of Mashiach, and Mashiach is the one that reveals the Yechidah that exists within every single Yid.
His is revealed
Mashiach's Yechidah is the Yechidah HaKlalis. So just like regarding the Eibishter himself.
If you say that there's 5, but we say there's 5 words also.
It's 5.
There's 5 levels also. You know,
but every Yid has 5 levels, sure. Yeah. But Yechidah is the deepest. But every Yid only has a nitzos of the Yechidah. Mashiach is the Yechidah HaKlalis connected to the Eibishter. Okay, so therefore we speak about still going to be
a person.
Yeah, a bus of Adam, of course. Bus of Adam. And that's a chelik ikri in Emunah. It's a chelik ikri in Emunah, kol mishein emayim boy. It's the daf could be a bus of Adam. Melech HaMashiach, not...
a bus of Adam is not like any other bus.
Correct. That is correct.
Right?
Yeah.
He's going to be...
Correct. Bias HaMashiach. Then after Mashiach comes, the Rambam goes on to say, V'yisaken es ha'olam, that he will fix the world, and will change the entire world, but that's all secondary. And therefore the Rebbe says, regarding the hachana for Mashiach, there's also 2 things. There's hachana for Mashiach for what we do in the existence of the world, to change the world, miftzayim, shava mitzvahs b'nei noyach, and so on and on, all the different kinds of things that we do to prepare the world to be ready for the Eibishter, for true living with Mashiach, with the Mashiach world. But then there's to prepare ourselves for Mashiach himself, above the influence in the world. What's that? To learn Torah on the highest level, which is Limud Rambam. To learn the Shia Rambam, where you learn Kol HaTorah Kula. That's when you have the very essence of Torah. Especially when you learn the entire Rambam, and you have all of the Ratzon of the Eibishter, without exception, that's the Etzem of the Eibishter B'Shleimus. So when you're learning Rambam, you're not learning Halacha L'Maisa. If the point was Halacha L'Maisa, then we would learn Shulchan Aruch. I heard years ago, I'm not sure if this is accurate, when the Rebbe came out with the Takana for Rambam, so one of the tainas that people had, those that were looking for tainas, they had against the Limud Rambam is it. You learn Rambam, and you're going to come away with an impression that you could paskin like certain things that Rambam says, and we don't always paskin like the Rambam. So he suggested to make a Rambam with a sidebar that's going to supplement the Rambam with the Halacha L'Maisa of the Shulchan Aruch. And then, okay, so it'll get rid of that Taina and the Kenshel and the Rambam. I think the idea was brought up to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe didn't encourage it. Why? Because the point that the Rebbe is saying over here is Limud Rambam is not about Halacha L'Maisa. When you learn about Halacha L'Maisa, we learned here last week, the Rebbe says, learning Halacha L'Maisa is a very, very important thing. There's no one like the Rebbe that encouraged Halacha L'Maisa, especially in certain years. The Rebbe was very strongly speaking about Halacha L'Maisa. But here we're talking about another Inyan. L'shma, to learn Torah just for the sake of the Torah. Halacha L'Maisa means as follows. There's an existence of a world, there's a life, and I have to use Torah now for guidance how to live life in accordance to the will of Hashem within the framework of the existence of the world. So the premise of Halacha L'Maisa is that you're using or you're having a level of Torah that's connected. It's guidance for an existence of a world. That's not the essence of Torah. If it's not the essence of Torah, even if you're learning Torah for this purpose, which is okay, but it's not the real Lishma of Torah. Real Lishma of Torah is when a person gets elevated out of his life, out of all existence, and he's connecting to the Torah as an existence of the Eibusher's Chochmah and Ratzon. That has nothing to do with anything. It's not necessarily applicable. It may be applicable. It may not be. It's not what it consists of. It's not what it's about. It's the essence of the Eibusher that's in the essence of Torah. And where do you have that? When you learn Torah, number one, not for necessarily Ma'aseh B'Payil. Number two, you're not picking and choosing. You're not learning one sugya, one section, one mesechta, one inyan. Taryag mitzvahs. All of the mitzvahs of the Torah, the entire Ratzon of the Eibusher B'Shleimus, Lishma, just to learn the Ratzon of the Eibusher, nothing to do with the application of Ma'aseh B'Payil. That is the essence of Limud Rambam, which is the hachana for the first level of Mashiach, for Mashiach himself. Before we get to the hachana of shlichus, mivtzayim, shava mitzvahs, which is only a hachana for the second stage of Mashiach. Right? So when the Rebbe introduced Rambam, it's because the Rebbe wanted us to prepare for Mashiach on this level as well. That's the point that Rebbe is saying here in the Sikha. First actually comes Mashiach himself. Bias Mashiach. Mashiach arrives and his kingdom is renewed. The kingdom of Mashiach is expressed. That's the first point of Mashiach.
Things that make him Mashiach.
Yeah, all those things though are simonim that the Rambam describes about the existence of Mashiach himself, not about what he does to influence the world. It's only about Mashiach himself and his relationship to Torah, mitzvahs, and Yidden.
But there's certain accomplishments in the world.
No. That was the diak we learned it. The Rebbe says if you look into the Rambam, when it says v'yisaken olam, the Rambam only speaks about tikkun olam.
I don't mean that. I'm talking about the things that teach you that he's Mamash Mashiach.
Yeah, okay. But all those things are in relation to Mashiach himself because it all is within the framework of Yidden. Building a Beis Hamikdash, Kibbutz Nidchei Yisrael, those are not yet related to an existence of the world. Tikkun olam, the Rambam says, this Lashon, tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, it's such an important thing. It is. In the Lashon of the Rambam, v'yisachen ha'olam, the Rambam only speaks about that after he talks about Mashiach himself. Mm-hmm. People that are not familiar with Chassidus and with the subject of Mashiach, so you think that the ikr of Mashiach is the fact that he's Masak in the world. That's not the way the Rambam presents it. The Rambam presents Mashiach as a melech, melucha. Mashiach is an individual, like you said, the boss of Adam, but his whole existence is bringing true kingdom. True kingdom is the Eibusher's kingdom, where everything that exists is batal and mevotel to the Eibusher. That's Mashiach himself. And for that, the Rebbe gave us a hachana for Mashiach himself, and that's to learn Rambam. So in the next section of the Sikha that we're going to learn today, the Rebbe is going to explain beautifully, based on the Hakdama of the Rambam himself, how and why Limud Rambam is the hachana for Mashiach himself. Very important point.
The levels we mentioned in Torah, Shiur, etc.
Yeah, different levels in Torah. So here we're speaking about the essence of Torah.
That's the highest level.
The highest level, the essence of Torah is the Limud of Rambam. Let's see. Okay, Sif Tezvov. Al Pizeh, Yesh Levaya Gam, Asher Rambam Peseach Hakdamosai. When the Rambam opens his introduction to the entire Sefer Hayad, the Rambam chooses the following pasuk. Pasuk Oz Lo Yevish. Then I will not be embarrassed. Since I look and I say that I have all of your mitzvahs. When I have all of your mitzvahs, I have nothing to be embarrassed about. This is the pasuk that Rambam chooses as the introductory pasuk for his sefer. Shashayches bepashtos, the pasuk zela sefer Mishneh Torah, the simple connection of this pasuk to his sefer. Mishnah Torah, Shechayol halachas the chala mitzvahs. It's a sefer that has halachas of all mitzvahs without exceptions. Who shall yidei habata el kol mitzvahs, that when you learn Rambam and you have all mitzvahs, oz and dafke, that only then lo yevish. It takes away embarrassment. That's the simple pshat of the sinya. Okay, but here the Rebbe is going to say a deeper pshat in the language of this pasuk. When it says here this lashon that I will not be embarrassed, what is this concept of embarrassment? It seems a little bit out of place. You want to say that you're going to be elevated, you're going to be whole, complete, connected. I mean, mitzvah means tzafsa v'chibur, any other expression. We're familiar with all of that. But busha, where's the subject of busha enter here? Merumez ha'iloi, the le'el sif yudalid, in this term of busha, embarrassment, here we see the idea that we just spoke about, that was before here in sif yudalid, shebidiyas kol mitzvahs, b'habiti el kol mitzvahsecha. When you learn all of Torah, all of Taryag mitzvahs without exception, so without this, there would be a level of embarrassment, but now that you learn Rambam, all mitzvahs, Torah, it takes away embarrassment. What does this mean? What are we talking about over here? Okay, so you can touch this on a very superficial level and say, if you don't know the halachas of all Taryag mitzvahs, it's embarrassing. It's amaratzis. A yid that knows all Taryag mitzvahs, so you take away the embarrassment of amaratzis. Maybe. Fair enough. Okay, but the Rebbe is going to explain that there's a much deeper meaning of what the busha represents. The Rebbe brings from the Rambam himself. So the point to answer this is, the Rambam himself writes in Hilchos Eidos as follows: when Eidim come to testify, and especially when it comes for Eidos that are testifying about din and nefashos, matters of life and death, and we want them to be very, very careful with what they're testifying. We let them know what's the power of false testimony. And the embarrassment of someone that testifies this way, both an embarrassment in this world and in the world to come. That's the expression of the Rambam. Over here as well, this expression of busha is a little bit interesting. Move on. All Isurim in Torah, Kodel Gam Isurim, Dalid Mises Bezdin. The most severe Isurim, where the punishment is capital punishment, the highest level. They have to be on a high level in their stringency because Eid Sheker, as stringent as it may be, but it's only a lav. We don't find such an expression that you let the person know that you're going to now suffer embarrassment in this world and in the world to come. So umawa kesher amiyuchad, the Eid Sheker dafke, emina boishes b'olam haba. What's the special idea that over here regarding false testimony that the Rambam says that what we warn these witnesses is that don't allow yourself to be embarrassed and to be embarrassed also in Olam Haba. Okay, which is the main thing that I'm going to focus on, the places in Olam Haba.
It could be that you may not have Olam Haba or something.
Right, but here it says you'll have embarrassment of Olam Haba. In the Rambam or in the Lashon of the Rambam, when he mentions Olam Haba, it refers to Gan Eden. That's a shit of the Rambam and again to Olam Haba, that it doesn't refer to Tchias HaMeisim, it refers to Gan Eden. Yeah. Okay, so what's the pshat in this? So the answer is as follows. There's something about false testimony that touches a yid to his core. Why? Because mitziyusai shel Yehudi hu eidos shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the things that identifies the very existence of who a yid is in this world, a yid is a living witness or a living testimony for the Eibishter. K'mishakasov atem eidai. Yidden are the Eibishter's witnesses. The Rebbe brings in Orah 51 the expression in the Zohar, atem eidai, ilain inun Yisrael. That is who Yidden are. Yidden are the representation, the witnesses of the Eibishter in this world. I know what this means is that when a Yid behaves good and properly, right, the entire world looks up to the Jew to see the goodness and kindness in the behavior of a Yid. Right, so this is, Goyim know this, whether consciously or subconsciously, that everything revolves around the Jew. The anti-Semite will tell you that the Jews are the ones that control everything in the world. They control the banks, the press, and the government. And everything is about the Jew. Where does that come from? Because it's true. It's this way. The Yidden are the Eibishter's representatives in this world. I mean, there's another way you could express it is the fact that Yidden are the chosen people. V'chulu v'chulu. The Eibishter gave us Eretz Yisrael, whatever. But over here, the Rebbe is saying that it says in the pasuk, Yidden are the Eibishter's witnesses. What are witnesses? Witnesses are ones that reveal. In other words, we are the ones that reveal the truth of the Eibishter's reality in this world. So therefore, all Goyim in the world are always looking towards Yidden. And when Yidden behave properly, Shem Torah mitzvahs, or in the Lashon of the Rebbe, and Haga Tova v'Yishara, so then Goyim will look up to the Yidden in the right way, to take guidance from the Yidden.
Or they would be more jealous.
Okay, I mean,
More jealous.
yeah. The source of this inyan, you could also, this is based on the Zayar, but you see also what the Gemara says, V'hafta Hashem Elikecha. When the Torah says the mitzvah of V'hafta, according to one pshat, the mitzvah of V'hafta, the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to love Hashem. So the Gemara says the mitzvah is not only that you should love Hashem. The mitzvah is Sheyehei Shem Shemayim Mis'ayv Hal Yotcha. That your behavior should cause others to say, oh, look, these are the people that Hashem chose, and they are connected to the Eibishter, and look at their behavior, and it'll bring them to love the Eibishter. What are people saying about a Yid? This person, look, he's learning Torah. Look how beautiful his lifestyle is. How beautiful his actions are. Avdi Ata Yisrael, Yidden are my servants. Asher b'cha aspire. In you, I can take pride. Eibishter says, I take pride in you, and they're all Goyim of the world see the behavior of Yidden and say that, look what happens to someone that follows the ways of Hashem and learns Torah.
Therefore, not embarrassed.
Yeah, Adarabah. Yidden take pride. Yidden are very proud Jews, very proud to be Mekayim Torah mitzvahs and to behave like Yidden externally and in a very open way. It's Adarabah. That's the way the Goyim come to respect the Yid. The Goyim Yaakov brings more respect, not less respect. Yeah, obviously. By the way, this Gemara also answers the famous question that Chassidus asks regarding the mitzvah of Avos Hashem. How could there be a mitzvah to command one to love? Hast lieb, hast du lieb. Hast nicht. A love is a feeling. If you don't have the feeling of love, so then the mitzvah is not fulfilled. So the answer that the mitzvah is the hisbaininus. Mitzvah is the hisbaininus, which brings the love. But if here, according to the Gemara, the answer is, even if we can't command you to have the feeling, but we could command you to behave accordingly, behave like a Jew, and then you should bring Ava to others. Others will come to respect and even love the Eibishter based on your, that is in your control. At least in, similar to what Al Rebbe says in Tanya regarding a Beinani, at least in Ma'aseh B'Poel, to behave like a Yid. Yeah. Okay, the Rebbe here brings another 55, that this idea is Inyan the Kiddush Hashem. This is what Kiddush Hashem is about. That the existence of a Yid in this world is to sanctify Hashem's name. The opposite of Kiddush Hashem is Eidus Sheker, Inyan de Chil Hashem. Eidus Sheker is a Chil Hashem. That's what it is. That's why Eidus Sheker is so severe. Shekaparasai Shechamura Me'akoil, Shechamura Me'akoil. The kapara for Chil Hashem, you see, is more severe than all the other Avedas. Actually, even more than the ones that are Chayev Mrs. Bezdin. As it says, that Chil Hashem, even Yom Kippur, is not Mechaper, and only Misa is Mechaper. Even if the act that the person is doing, Chil Hashem could be a certain act the person did, that if you look at that act that he did, it may not be something so severe. It may not actually be something that's usher at all. But, for example, what's an example of a Chil Hashem that's not an Isser? Littering. Okay? When you see a Talmud Chacham behaving in a certain way, if he doesn't pay his worker immediately, he doesn't take care of things on the right level that it's expected of a Talmud Chacham, or even at a vav on the beggar of a Talmud Chacham, a stain on his garment, things similar. So it's a Tava Aser? No, but it's a Chil Hashem. And Chil Hashem in itself is the most severe thing. Now the Rebbe says that it's a similar thing regarding Eid Sheker. When it comes to Eid Sheker, not only are you not allowed to say false testimony, then obviously you're being over on Isra, that's the lav. But there's another thing. You're not allowed to stand there. If someone comes to you, the Rambam says, you don't have to testify. I'm going to say the false testimony, but you just stand near me, and you're a very respected person. And if you're standing near me, nobody's going to doubt my testimony. You're not going to be asked any questions. I just need you to stand there. to give me the trust. You're not allowed. You're making the impression that his Eidus is correct. Right? So that means even though technically the person standing in the room is not doing any Isser, but the very fact that he's creating this Chilul Hashem, that the other person is not being trusted, that in itself is the worst thing in the world. Okay, let's go back inside the Sikha. Second column here, about Pizeh. So about Pizeh, move on, based on this we can understand, Mashadavke be'edei sheker, specifically by this Isser, of false witnesses, Yesh inyan aboishes b'olam haza b'olam haba. The Rambam says what we warn him is that you're going to have embarrassment in this world and in the world to come. She'eni b'shar isurim, we don't find this expression by other isurim, lafilu lebes isuri dalid mises bezdin, not even by the most severe isurim of mises bezdin. Why? Because kikolo isurim heminyonim pratim. At the end of the day, as severe as an isur is, every isur has a specific inyan that isur is a problem in one specific area. Yeah, obviously, you can't compare loisertzach to something much lighter, a lav that's much lighter than that's not so severe. But soft, every isser is an inyan prati. What is the person doing here? You are an aid. A yid, in his essence, is an aid, and he's an aid of truth. That's what yid is. He's an aid to notify people the truth of Hashem's existence. When a yid goes and is an aid of sheker, he's going against the very existence of who he really is. Instead of being that agent or testimony of truth, he's saying false testimony. So now what he's doing is going against the entire point of his existence in the world. That Yid is supposed to be the one that reveals truth about everything. And instead of it here, you're revealing or saying something which is false. So even though the falsehood you're saying is about a specific incident, did he borrow money? Did he not borrow money? Whatever the specific incident may be. But the idea of Eidus, a Yid is an Eidus to reveal truth, and instead you're saying a lie, that goes against the whole entire inyan, the whole point of who Yid is. Now this specifically is connected to the concept of busha. What is the unique thing about embarrassment? Okay, so we'll start inyan now. We'll continue the inyan next week. So the Rebbe here says as follows. What is the true definition of embarrassment? It's something that a person feels he loses, like when a person, the expression that a person gets very embarrassed, he wants to find a hole to bury himself. He loses his whole standing, like he gets red in the face, and he just wants to run away and hide and bury himself alive. When a person is really embarrassed, he loses. It's a very deep thing that a person loses his entire worth. His entire worth of existing. If you give a person malchus, so it's painful. The person has a body and he wants to preserve the health and the good feeling of the existence of his body. So malchus is touching a little bit the person's existence. Any other thing is touching a certain aspect of the person's existence. Busha, number one, is your nefesh, is your life, is your soul, is your very self-worth. Person gets embarrassed publicly, he loses his whole self-worth. In other words, in a case where a person is being embarrassed, so it's not like a punishment where your body is being whipped, where your body feels pain, or financially you're being penalized, where you have to give a certain knas. So over there, you're not missing anything. As the Rebbe says, when there are the different modes of payment, when one injured another yid, so there's 5 possibilities of modes of payment, right? You're paying for his value that went down, his pain, doctor bills, his unemployment as a result. But then there's something else, it's baishas. All those things, there you're paying for different details of what you took away from this person when you injured him, whether in the health of his body or financially. But there's something more regarding the very existence of the person's self-worth and his soul. A person that's embarrassed, or bozi is another word, or like a disgraced person. Bozi, a person that is a disgraced individual. It's a person that loses any worth of living. A person that you see walks around and he can't dress properly, and wherever he walks around, says this person stays away from. It's a person that has no self-dignity, person that loses his self-dignity and his self-worth. It's like he loses his whole interest in life altogether. That's what real embarrassment means. It's something that's very deep. So so therefore, the Rambam here uses this expression regarding Eid Sheker. So you can look at Eid Sheker in two different ways. There's an aspect about Eid Sheker that's also a prati is a gavera. There's a certain amount of money that's in a court case, and the person is bringing and hiring you as a false witness, and you are causing someone to pay $1,000. That is not just. Okay, so you can look at it in that sense. What the Eid Sheker has done, it's caused transfer of monies, $1,000 of a loss. So, okay, that's the prati is the issue of Eid Sheker. But then there's something else. When you warn Eid Sheker, and actually, as I mentioned, the main warning is regarding capital punishment. You're warning them to look at Eid Sheker in the broader sense, what it is. That Eid Sheker means, so even though if it's only a lav, afal pekain, harei al yidei zeh, dafke, mashenkim b'shari surim, it's specifically here, the nasa, hepech, the klolis in yonai, a yid that is hired to be a false witness, he's giving up the whole purpose of his existence. He loses the whole reason for why Hashem created him as a Jew in this world, to be the witness of Hashem, to be the witness to express and testify truth. Instead, he's testifying opposite. Therefore, this is the concept of busha. The Rambam says, okay, based on this, we'll learn next week. The Rebbe will explain how this relates back to Oz loy evoish biti al kol mitzisecha. I'll begin, Yana.